Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, covering the LSU Tigers for the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and NOLA.com. Randy Rosetta, how you doing, Randy?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Great to talk to you. Thanks for talking with us today. Of course, the big game tomorrow night in Baton Rouge, LSU, Alabama. It doesn't quite have the same feel as last year in November, does it?
It does not, but not overall. But when you talk about a number one team coming to Baton Rouge for a night game at Tiger Stadium, there is certainly some snap, crackle, and pop to that. You walk around Baton Rouge, drive around Baton Rouge today, you can kind of feel the electricity kind of building. It may not be as electric yet, but I have a feeling that come Saturday night it'll be there.
What's the mood in Baton Rouge based on the ineffectiveness of the LSU offense for most of this season going into this ball game? Does anybody think that LSU has a real shot to beat Alabama tomorrow night?
I think there's an underdog mentality among the LSU fans, and it's because of that offense. I think they know the defense can stack up with Alabama or anybody in the country. There's no reason to believe that the running game won't work if the passing game is working, and when I say the offense, that's what I should say. There's no lack of confidence in LSU running the ball. That's always there. The offensive line that's kind of been rebuilt has been fun to watch, but it's the passing game that's just not been there for LSU, and that's really created some imbalance. And I'm trying to think. I've been here 9 years. I don't remember a game where a team coming in here where there was this little confidence among the LSU fans. I think there's almost a sense of foreboding that I just hope, people are thinking we just hope we can keep this close.
It's so frustrating because it seems like it's been since Jimbo Fisher that LSU has had an offense that they could really count on to hold its own against teams. You just kind of hoped and prayed that Jordan Jefferson or Jarrett Lee might be able to make a play. And then this year there were so many high hopes with Mettenberger, and things just haven't worked out so far for whatever reason. Is it scheme? Is he having problems? I know the receivers have been dropping balls like crazy, and the offensive line has been makeshift. What's the main problem?
It's a group-wide effort in the passing game. It's Mettenberger not having great touch at times. It's him not having pocket awareness early in the season. As you mentioned, it's the receivers not only dropping passes, but they've not always run the best routes. And with, starting at the college level going on in the NFL, that's a very underappreciated art, and a very key element to an offense is how a receiver runs, or is he where he's supposed to be for his quarterback. And I think LSU's receivers have struggled with that at times, and that's made Zach look probably a little bit worse than he's played. So Zach and the receivers really need to get on the same page with each other. And you would have thought that with the summer to get used to each other, spring football and preseason camp, that might have happened, but it just hasn't. And part of that, you go back to a first-year starting quarterback in the SEC. I think he underestimated a little bit what he was heading into, and then the fact that the receivers aren't necessarily young, but besides Odell Beckham Jr., they're not overly experienced either. Russell Shepard is the exception, but he just hasn't played much.
And Odell Beckham has been disappointing this year with all of his drops. We thought he was going to be the star of the offense, and he's really not had that great a year.
No, he had some drops early on, and I don't know if that affected his confidence to the point where he just hasn't been able to get it back, but it's definitely been a struggle for him this year. Jarvis Landry, there were a lot of expectations on him, and to be fair, he is a great blocker from the receiver position, which is very key in LSU's offense. He's also a great special teams player, so I hate to say that he's been a disappointment, but I think he's underwhelmed a little bit as far as catching the ball from the receiver spot, and that doesn't make him, he's not far from alone in that. Probably LSU's most reliable receiver has been Cadron Boone. He's a possession guy, kind of a wily veteran that does know how to run routes and get open. And then the other guy is tight end Nick Jacobs, who has shown a very nice set of hands. So it's hard to have an explosive passing offense when you're talking about a tight end, although he is a very athletic tight end, and a possession receiver being your main go-to guys.
We had Tim Brando on the show a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this, and Gary Danielson had made the comment that when Jarrett Lee threw the second interception last year in the November game against Alabama, from that point on, Les Miles kind of just pulled the reins in and iced the offense and said, we're going to win this thing playing defense and not killing ourselves offensively. Has Les lost his nerve?
I think he's lost some confidence in what he has at quarterback, and that was going back to last year. I think he saw that there are a couple things. He saw that Jordan Jefferson brought that dual threat element back, and he would much rather have the ball in a quarterback's hands who could run with it as well as throw with it with that team. I think this year he had restored the confidence in that position, thinking that Zach Mettenberger would give them some different weapons. But a couple interceptions at the goal line, a lost fumble at the 2-yard line against Auburn, I think that confidence kind of got shattered. I think they've been working on rebuilding it. You know, they came out against A&M and actually threw the ball a lot. They just didn't complete a lot. So he's let Zach Mettenberger throw the ball more than people realize, I think. But Zach has to kind of hold up his end of the bargain and hit a few of those. So where that confidence is, I think we'll find out Saturday night how far along it's come now.
And we just haven't seen much of the Mad Hatter lately, the fourth down tries and trick plays and things like that. So it seems like he's gotten really conservative.
You know, we asked him about that the other day. I actually wrote a story today, and Tommy Tuberville's not completely buying that. He talked about that Les is hard to prepare for as the opposing coach because you don't know what he'll do.
Uh-huh.
He hasn't gone for it as much on fourth down and done things, but he's had pretty good teams that hasn't needed to.
All right, so as far as LSU's defense dealing with Alabama now, I mean, last year at this time, up until the LSU game in November, A.J. McCarron had been kind of held under wraps. Nick was keeping a tight rein on him. Then he turned him loose in the BCS championship game. You know, right now, McCarron may be playing as good a quarterback as anybody in the country.
Yeah, there's no question. It took a while, but he's in the Heisman Trophy conversation. When you look at his numbers, you see why. He's not thrown an interception in 8 games, which is just mind-boggling to me when you look at how many times he's thrown the ball and the fact that that's such a bigger part of their offense now. He's made good decisions. He's gone from game manager to game changer, really. They're taking shots downfield, and that's helped open up the running game. So he's arguably, he may not be the most valuable player on their offense because they've got such a great offensive line, but A.J. McCarron he's a legit Heisman Trophy candidate. This is kind of his Heisman moment this weekend.
So how do you see this thing coming out tomorrow night?
I think it's going to be a game very similar to the one last November where there's going to be a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of defensive struggles, at least in the first half. Now, if you go back beyond last year, that happened a lot when these two teams met, but there were some adjustments at halftime, and both of them moved the ball a lot better after halftime. And it wouldn't surprise me if that happens this year because you've got an offensive line for Alabama that's as good as anybody in the country. You've got a young offensive line for LSU that's gained a little bit of confidence and probably a little bit more powerful running game for LSU when you look at how many backs they've got. So I think you'll see some points maybe in the third quarter, and then I think you'll see both coaching staffs pull back a little bit in the fourth quarter and start to play field position. But I think it'll be a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and then I think Alabama will score late to make it like a 23-10 final.
It'll be a man's game, though, that's for sure.
There's no question that when these two to get together, there's nothing finesse about it. Let's put it that way.
It's fun stuff. Randy, thanks very much for coming on with us, man. We really appreciate it. Good talking to you again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, Randy Rosetta from NOLA.com and the New Orleans Times-Picayune on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.